I thank the university management for giving us this opportunity to hold this Faculty of Arts annual lecture. The topic of our lecture today is the role of theology in the evolution of science, university education in this area. As we all know, when we say theology, theology is the rational and systematic study of religion and its influences, and also of the nature of religious truth. And religion as a tool to nation building plays such roles as serving as societal integration and social control. Today, Nigeria seems to record the greatest number of sects and religions than our neighbors. And so religion has come to stay and is playing a very crucial role in our society in Nigeria. Luckily for us today, the speaker, Professor Dapo Ashaju, is an expert and a guru in theology. And so I believe we are going to go away from this lecture with a lot of more understanding and takeaways. On this note, I would like to call on our Vice Chancellor, Professor Olarewaju Fagbon, SAN, NPOM, for his opening remarks and to declare this lecture open. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, my Dean. Let me recognize members of management here present. I can see the university librarian. I know that my other colleagues in management, they have distributed themselves all over, because I know Faculty of Science is also on with an event. So it's more like trying to make sure that we cover the ground. The Dean of Arts, Professor Tayo Ajayi. Let me first apologize that I'm not putting on my camera. I'm just trying to manage my connectivity because I'm not in Lagos. So that is why I'm having that challenge. Former deans of faculty here present, I welcome you all. Let me specially recognize the speaker today, our own dear Right Reverend Professor Dapo Folorunsho Ashaju, and his very amiable wife, my learned friend, Mrs. Harriet Ashaju. I welcome you heartily. Respected professors, heads of departments, my other colleagues, participants from outside the faculty, our world-class students, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to this very great lecture that we are all looking forward to. When the dean called me, I think that was a few days back, that he wanted to remind me that he would want me to attend this lecture. I noted to him that I have certain challenges. Let me recognize the immediate past dean of the faculty, Professor Harrison Adeniyi, especially. I welcome you, sir. I noted to him that I have a number of challenges that are confronting me. The meeting of the executive committee meeting of the Association of Vice Chancellors is ongoing at the moment, of which I am an alternate chair and is running side by side. So I felt that is going to be there for me. Then I also knew that I had committed myself to the Faculty of Science, where I'm supposed to make some remarks at the conference, where the Deputy Governor is currently the chair and special guest of the event that is ongoing. But side by side with that, Right Reverend Dapo Ashaju, Professor Dapo Ashaju, is one man whose event I will not totally want to miss. So if I'm not able to stay through to the end of this, I plead your indulgence. It is because of all these other challenges. I hope I am audible. Dean.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, we can hear you, sir. We can hear you.
Thank you. I plead your indulgence. It is because of all these other things that I have to be shuttling in and out that is holding me back. But in terms of remarks, what do you say about Right Reverend Professor Dapo Asaju? What do you say about this man? You know, yes, we can emphasize and say that he's an academician of note, a bishop theologian of the Anglican Church. All of this we can say. But what comes readily to recall is his immediate past service as Vice Chancellor of Ajayi Crowther University. I will say this. Under his watch, 94 buildings were executed in the 3 campuses of the university. This is a university that is not receiving subvention. So it is something that he used his own managerial and administrative abilities to bring in goodwill and source for funds to fund that university, in addition to the tuition and how much would that tuition be. And over a period of 5 years, he was able to have upstanding 94 buildings. That is at the last count that I knew. I am sure by the time they read his CV, they will have more to say about him. So you're talking also of an administrator par excellence. You are talking of an innovative manager. You're talking of a strategic leader. You're talking of an achiever of distinction. That is the kind of man that we hear this morning that is making a presentation to us. When his tenure ended, he was offered a second term, which he refused. Very respected colleagues, Dean of the faculty, I want to say this. I did not read that on the pages of newspapers. I am privy to it. I am privy to it in the sense that I was contacted that I should appeal to him. They called me. They said, Vice Chancellor Lasso, appeal to this man. We want him to continue. Of course, as the adage goes, so I called him. I said, Right Reverend, this is the thing they have asked me to communicate to you. He said, BC, no. He said, I signed up to a 5-year term. I will not go against that. What did he show? He showed clear principles. Again, when he came back into our university, he seamlessly moved back into his department and into the faculty and the university. What does this denote? It denotes humility. He has served at the highest level of university administration. He came back and eased himself back and continued his activity within us. So today, we are speaking of a man with commendable strides. Today, he'll be speaking with us on the role of theology in the evolution of sound university education and nation building in Nigeria. All of us, if they ask us today that what is the problem and the challenge of Nigeria, none of us will hesitate before saying values, principles, attitude. Those are the challenges. I watched a video clip a few days back of, I think it's somewhere in maybe Russia or so. You see the lush green on the side of the road. There was heavy traffic on the main road. Those of them who were on the road kept to the road. Nobody took to the median in order to escape the traffic. Nobody took to the median. If you go to Republic of Benin here, that is how you are going to find it. You see respect for rules and regulations without anybody monitoring or policing them. I am not the one to give the lecture. It's Right Reverend Dapo Asaju that is going to be giving the lecture. But I am just signposting for us. What are those challenges that we are having as a nation? What are those challenges confronting us as a country? Why we are refusing to grow? What can theology offer us in this scheme of things? I'll use this opportunity to formally and warmly welcome Right Reverend Dapo Asaju back to the university, together with your amiable wife. I also want to use this opportunity to congratulate the Faculty of Arts for being able, within a short time, to get this man to mount the podium. to share perspectives with us. I see it as a great one for our institution. I congratulate the Lagos State University, and I use this opportunity to declare this event open. And thank you very much. I'm done.
Thank you, sir. It's always a pleasure to listen to our Vice Chancellor, an international scholar.
My dean, sorry, before I go away, I can see that I have a running mate on the platform, Professor Yemi Olatunji Bello. She's also here. We were together at the science event. That's the former acting vice chancellor of our institution. We welcome you to this event. I thank you. I'm sorry to break the protocol.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Before we go ahead to read the citation of Professor Dapo Asaju, I just want to recognize a few of our revered professors and friends in the house. I recognize Professor Olatunji Bello, our former acting vice chancellor. I can see Professor Akambi, Professor Oshoba, Professor Yemi Akinko too. You are welcome, sir. I can recognize one of our friends from Ukraine, Mr. Dr. Aloba Tosi. You are welcome. And a lot of others we will recognize as we go ahead. I want to especially recognize the wife of our Professor Dapo Asaju. You are welcome. Thank you for coming. The Deputy Vice Chancellor Academics, you are very, very welcome, sir. We thank you for being here. Thank you. Now, we go ahead to read the citation of Professor Dapo Asaju. The subdean, Dr. Bashir Animashaun, please, you can go ahead.
The Vice Chancellor, sir, while standing on the existing protocol, this is a citation of Professor Okay. The Vice Chancellor, sir, while standing on the existing protocol, here is a citation of Professor Dapo Asaju, former Vice Chancellor and a professor of Christian Religious Studies. Professor Dapo Folorunsho Asaju joined the staff of the Department of Religions in 1984. He rose to become Professor of Christian Studies since 2004. His area of specialization is New Testament studies and theology. He delivered his inaugural lecture in 2005 titled Retrolling Theology as Queen of Sciences, the Theological Challenges of African Biblical Hermeneutics. Professor Asaju obtained his Bachelor's of Arts and Master's of Arts and PhD degree from the University of Ilorin, Nigeria. He was variously the acting of the Department of Religious Studies, acting dean of Faculty of Arts, director of Center for General Nigerian Studies, and the former chairman of Academic Staff Union of Universities, Lagos University chapter, between 1988 and 1993. Professor Asaju was a member of the Governing Council, member of Advisory Council to Government of Rear Admiral Mike Haigbe, the former governor of Lagos State, was the chaplain of the Chapel of Light and acting deputy vice chancellor academics of the Lagos State University. He served as external examiner to University of Birmingham, United Kingdom, University of Lagos, Ibadan, Jos, Benin, Port Harcourt, and the Obafemi Awolowo University, as well as University of Ilorin, amongst others. Professor Dapo Asaju is the Bishop Theologian of the Anglican Church of Nigeria, overseeing the theologies and doctrines of the church. He served as Vice Chancellor of Ajayi Crowther University, Oyo, between 2005 and 2020. Professor Asaju is married to Barrister Harriet Dapo Asaju. Thank you, sir.
have just succeeded on muting the speaker. Vice Chancellor of Lagos University, Professor Olarewaju Adefabowu, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Professor of Law, MPOM, the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academic, Deputy Vice Chancellor, Administration, the former Acting Vice Chancellor of Lagos University, Professor Bimiola Bello, the registrar of this great university, BOSA, the university librarian, the Dean of the Faculty of Arts, Professor Tao Jai, to whom I'm grateful for nominating to deliver lecture, the Deans of other faculties, Directors of various academic and centers of Lagos University, my acting head of Department of Religions and Studies, where I am primarily domiciled, eminent professors and doctors who are us online and those who are here, physically, distinguished members of academic and non-academic staff university, our dear friends of Lagos State University, gentlemen of the press, ladies and gentlemen. The title of this Court of Arts lecture is The Role of Theology in the Evolution of Sound University. We're very sorry for the fluctuation in the internet facility. The role of this lecture, again, is the role of, the title of the lecture is the role of theology in the evolution of university education and nation building in Nigeria. The preamble. I thank the Vice Chancellor for granting the request of the Dean of Faculty of Arts that I deliver this Faculty of Arts lecture coming up in the closing period of the successful and impactful tenure of our Vice Chancellor, who has repositioned Lagos State University as a first-class institution in which we are all very proud. We are LASU and we are indeed very proud. And on behalf of my wife, Harriet, and family, I thank the management under the leadership of the distinguished Vice Chancellor, a very compassionate brother, elder scholar, for approving my leave of absence to serve as your ambassador at Ajayi Crowther University for a period of 5 years, and for welcoming me back home very humbly with every I'm sorry, I have to use another system that has more stable internet. The last time I had the honor of addressing an assembly of academic dignitaries in this university, such as this. Dignitaries, including those who are online, was in 2005, 15 years ago, when I delivered the 18th inaugural lecture of Lagos State University. The title of the inaugural lecture then was Re-enthroning Theology as Queen of All the Sciences. The title of this faculty lecture today is not unrelated to the crux of our advocacy then. That is, that theology, which is the study of everything about God, is an essential part of our identity, and it assists our relevance as human beings who operate within the dynamics of society and nationhood. The relevance of theology in private and public life. Theology refers to the systematic study about God in all its ramifications. Is it studies about God, words of God, words from God, words about God, man's reflection of God's mind? Who is he? Where did he originate from? What are his attributes? What are his works and influences? What are his laws and ethics? And what are his values? Comprehensively, it's talking about everything about God. And all religions have their respective theologies. Today, we are focusing on religious theology, specifically Christian theology, where I have my chair. Theology refers to every form of study about God in its various ramifications. It derives from two Greek words, theos, meaning God, and logos, meaning words. Therefore, theology is words about God, studies about God, God-related business. It incorporates that which is thought, said, believed concerning God, given in human terms by the Bible itself as the divine revelation of God. Millard Erickson defines systematic theology, which is a branch of Christian theology, as, I quote, that discipline which attempts to arrange the doctrinal content of Scripture in a coherent fashion, express it in a comprehensive form, and relate it to issues of practical Christian living. Theology is paramount to the church and to the society. As A.W. Tozer puts it rightly, I quote him, we being what we are, and all things else being what they are, the most important and profitable study any one of us can engage in is, without question, the study of theology. And everyone has to do with God, because we are not just human beings that are constituted of matter. We are a body, we are a soul, we are a spirit. Every form of business in this world, no matter your area of specialization, we only deal with the physical nature of man. That deals with the soul of man, the spirit of man, the destiny of man, the future of man, man's life in the hereafter. They are all in the business of theology. And Professor Bolaji Do rightly put it, we are in all things very religious. All of us are religious, from leadership down even to the base. And that's the reason why even when we are inaugurating the new government, the others swear with the Holy Bible or with the Holy Quran, because the role of religion is so fundamental, everyone will require it. C.H. Spurgeon says, in too many cases, the sublime truths are held in abeyance under the pretense that they are revealed, proved, and woe unto us if we pretend to be wiser. Tendency by people to think that maybe science is the only issue, subject matter that is relevant today because of its practical impact. But those things that are intangible, that have to do with the behavioral pattern of man and the very essence of man, they are actually more important. Why? Because they were revealed. Religion comes by virtue of revelation. Religion was not thought out. It's a product of revelation. God must deal with man, man must deal with God, and through dealing with God, man must deal with man. Our argument in this lecture is that life was better when godliness was inbuilt
in our educational system, in our politics, in our governance, than now, when it appears that very many products of universities and schools, as well as leaders and rulers in government, have failed due to lack of the fear and discipline which godliness enhanced hitherto. Schools used to encourage godliness. We could remember when we were in school, whether private schools, religious schools, some went to mission schools, whether Christian or Muslim, but it was the normal business of the day to start the day with prayer and for people to imbibe the spirit of discipline. Discipline was very profound in those days. Even in secondary school, school prefects were as respected as the teachers were because the system ensured discipline, accountability, moral uprightness, and people knew that they had to develop their character alongside their intellectual acumen. That is this story that was told of an event at Oxford University when at the Senate meeting of Oxford University, a student came out as the best student of that year, first class in nuclear physics. And as soon as the VC called for approval of the student's results, a very old professor raised his hands and said, this student cannot graduate. People were surprised. The best student in nuclear physics produced ever. And the boy has met all the requirements, he has passed all the courses. But the man said, the boy cannot go. They argued. And the man said, can you show me a copy of the certificate of Oxford University and read out what is inscribed on the certificate? And what was on the certificate? As we have on our certificates, this candidate, having been found satisfactory in learning and character, is hereby awarded the degree in this particular field, signed by the registrar and the vice chancellor. So the very aged professor says the boy has satisfied the requirement in learning, but he has not satisfied the requirement in character. He is a member of my class. He comes late to the class. He's very temperamental, very disrespectful. It's not a good image of a graduate of Oxford University. He has to stay. They said, what will he be doing if he does not graduate? He said, give him 1 more year and let him learn how to be sober. Academics is a sober reflection. Because when you train people who have certificates and they don't have the fear of God, then you have really trained a potential devil who will injure the system. So our argument in this lecture is that theology is a very fundamental part for the formation of human beings, the human personality, and that life was better in the educational sector and also in the nations when godliness was built into our educational system, into our politics, and into our governance than now, when it appears that very many products of universities and schools, as well as the leaders and rulers in government, have failed due to the lack of the fear of God and the indiscipline, which godliness used to enhance in the past. We now have failed states, not only in Nigeria, but even in other parts of the world. How can we explain the dastardly acts of Boko Haram and Fulani herdsmen who kill at random, while the state's security apparatuses have not been able to effectively tame them? They watch helplessly and they give excuses one after the other after people have been killed in a country that has law and order, that has a government in place, that has very strong security outfits. There are underlying factors why there appears to be this collapse of our security infrastructure. It is attitudinal. How are we sure that those people who are supposed to protect us are not even part of those people who join the groups of assailants? It is a matter of a human personality. When a person has a bad character, the person has no empathy, has no fear, has no consideration, he can do anything. And that's the reason why fundamentally religion is that has the capacity to change the human personality. And when you change the human personality, the fruit is going to show. That's what the Bible says. When righteous people are in power, the people will rejoice. When wicked people are in power, all of us are going to bear the consequences of their failures and of their own oppression. How do you explain people just being slaughtered like animals even in the northern part. So it is not a question of one religion against another now. Even people are being killed in the mosque as much as they are being killed also in the churches here and there, and people are suffering. And the future is very, very bleak for this country. It is attitudinal, and religion must have to be properly controlled as a positive influence upon people. How do you want to explain a government that will allow its military people to shoot at youths who are protesting the NSAS out of their fundamental human rights? It was unthinkable in the past that the government of Nigeria will look at its own future leaders being shot out like criminals. And up to today, I'm not sure the president has apologized for those who were killed, the children and the parents who lost their children to that struggle. It shows how collapsed we are in our leadership in this country. Our leaders are not getting it right. They are not behaving properly. I think they are behaving like animals. And that is the reason why they need to be tamed. How do you want to explain that? How do you want to explain a situation where we spend the taxpayers' money to train medical doctors in our medical schools in this country, and students go through so many years of training, practicals and theoretical, only for us to lose them to Canada, to England, thousands of them. They have left this country in droves, and they are serving the white men who are better than we are, while our own health infrastructure is collapsing, while our people are dying very helplessly here. Because of the love for the dollar and the pound sterling, our sense of patriotism is going away. People are not ready to die for this country. They're not ready to even live for this country. And when a country loses her brains in engineering, in nursing, in the medical field, woe to that country. The future is going to be very bleak. It is a calamity. But our leaders are not perturbed. They are not bothered about it at all. How do you want to explain a situation where legislators, Nigerian legislators, during the COVID-19 pandemic, chose to spend billions of naira to renovate their parliamentary buildings and to buy brand new cars, while millions of youths are jobless degree holders, while so many people are in acute poverty? They don't even know where their next meal is going to come from, and where the rate of banditry, kidnapping, and this is continuing. Wanton killings of innocent Nigerians are there. Our legislators don't think that that is very important today. All they think about is their own comfort. And by the way, does it make sense for a legislature to earn more than the president of a country? And because of the fear of impeachment, nobody seems to call them to order. A professor in Nigeria today will go home with less than 500,000 naira in a month after 10 years as a professor. And one legislator who is half illiterate will be earning millions and millions every month for doing what? They sleep most of the time in their chamber. They are not even there. It is a reckless, failed system. It is attitudinal. But life goes on. And we have a spirit of amnesia where even when tragedies occur, we soon forget about them. And so the leaders have taken us for granted. No matter what happens, people will soon forget. But as the NSAS protests showed, people will not always forget. A day of reckoning will also come up one day. The answer is really that our leaders may have gone through some form of formal education and they were duly certificated, but they are really not completely or properly educated. They are not imbued with the fear of God and a sense of accountability to God and to man for the offices that they occupy. That is why they behave abnormally. The absence of theology and its content in their training may account for this malady. Theology, studies about God, for all of us are religious. It teaches about the knowledge of God. It teaches about the fear of God. It teaches us how to be law-abiding, how to be humble in service. In fact, that is the origin of workers being called civil servants or public servants. You are not rulers. You are appointed or elected as a servant of the people, accountable to the people, paid with the taxpayers' money. So this idea of bigmanism in politics is erroneous. They are actually servants. And that's the reason why in more sane countries, you find presidents being brought to justice, even former presidents being put in jail. And people are even anxious now when Donald Trump leaves office. Are you sure that he will not even be prosecuted for the things that immunity prevented him from being prosecuted for? So these are countries where nobody is above the law. Theology teaches us to be very humble in service. In fact, Mosaic laws gave guide to ethical behavior. It set boundaries on human rights and governance. It compelled people to pray for constituted authorities. It encourages love, peaceful relations in diverse communities. It encourages valor, patriotism, honesty, sacrifice, integrity, social service, etc. In fact, the current concept of government which we are practicing today has its origin in religion. Take the Bible, for example. Isaiah chapter 33, verse 22 says, "For the Lord is our judge." That's where we got judiciary as an arm of government from. The Lord is our lawgiver. That is where legislature came from. The Lord is our righteous king. That's where we have the executive arm of government from. From that verse of the Bible, you have the executive government, legislative government, and the judicial government. A majority of our laws in this country, whether they are the common English law or the Sharia law, they owe their origin to scriptures. And we have heavy populations of Christians and Muslims in this country. Why are we not getting them right? If we look into the Holy Scripture, we will understand that we have enough provisions that will guide our governments to be progressive, to be accountable, to be humane, to be God-fearing, and to think more of the good of the common man instead of their own pocket and the pockets of their children born and unborn. So we see that God is intrinsically related to governance and our forms of education. In fact, in the Bible, King Nebuchadnezzar, after he had been tamed because of his arrogance, he said, "Now I know that the Most High God, he reigns in the affairs of men." Even when Israel shifted from theocracy to monarchy or democracy, God still influenced people's national policies. He set their moral boundaries. He supervised their elections and even supervised the anointment of kings like Saul and David. God was still there. How do you want to speak of Nathan, who went to David, the king, the powerful king, and told him, "You are the man who has committed harm, and God is going to judge you for impoverishing a poor man unjustly." So there was accountability because of the God factor and the theological factor at that particular time. So the people themselves were God's own people, and there was this supervision by the men of God who were called watchmen over the society. That was the sense of religious underpinning of democracy, which made the United States of America to have as its motto, "In God we trust." God matters, even in education and nation building. There's a scholar who wrote that philosophical and theoretical basis of modern Western moral education rely on significant contributions from several Western scholars, theoreticians, and philosophers, notably Emil Durkheim, John Dewey, Kohlberg, and Immanuel Kant. All of them were greatly influenced by Greek philosophers. The foundational Western theories of moral meaning are dialectically derived between individual and society. The Western conception of the individual has deep philosophical roots in the question of whether morality is primarily a group experience or an individual phenomenon. Like Durkheim, many academics believe that moral truth is socially constructed, which is qualified and formed through immersion in the social body. These individuals, they reject the distinction between the individual and the social morality. In the Western liberal democracy, societies are becoming increasingly secular, where religion and spirituality are losing their impact or are less valued. Evidently, this situation will have an overarching effect on morals, on values, on ethics, and on virtues, and society may not get the full benefit of it. This is talking about philosophers' idea of individuality and social construct of the society. In Nigeria, like other Africans, we are communal. We live as members of the society. In fact, we do know that in those days, when Nigeria was Nigeria, if a child misbehaved outside the home, any parent that observes the misbehavior of the child will discipline that child. We will raise our children together in the community. We live together communally in our homes. We were not individualistic. Me and my nuclear family and nobody else cares. That is not the idea. We don't have the culture of our old people being thrown into old people's home where we see them only once in a year during Thanksgiving or during Christmas. They live with us and we keep them, we take care of them, we nurse them, and we wait for them to pronounce the last blessing before they depart to the world beyond. That is our life. We were not meant to be selfish as individuals. We were meant to be part of the community. If a part of the community suffers, everybody will suffer. That is what we have lost. We took that from other culture to the extent that our commonwealth today, people are plundering it. And people are forgetting that this commonwealth that we depend upon today, which is the oil, is a depletable resource. It's going to dry up one day. Even if it does not, those who buy our oil are developing electric-powered vehicles. Very soon, they're not going to need us. Very soon, we're going to find ourselves stranded. What shall we say to our children yet to be born that we did with the money from the oil? What do we have to show for it? You drive to Badagry from Lasso to Badagry is a horrible experience, a very terrible experience. You drive through even GRA, which is supposed to be an elite country. Everywhere is collapsed. So why are we paying taxes and why do we have governments in place? They failed and they still have the audacity to come 4 years after asking for our votes. Our people are so gullible, they are so vulnerable, and they're not critical enough to call them to account. And these people who are going to contest for election, they're going to find their way by hook or crook to get to the places of office, and we'll still find ourselves repeating the same story. How can we have this large number of professors, brains, and doctors in this country, and we are where we are? Something fundamentally is very wrong. That's what Emile Duncan, Immanuel Kant are saying. You exist not in isolation, you exist as a part of the community. So if you regard this as a commonwealth, you will be very careful the way the way you deal with it. And we have to be very careful. And it is the same thing that affects our attitude. And in this aspect, the Yorubas have been very, very foolish. You find a father who will sell the land of the family to outsiders who are not indigenous of the place. And once they buy the land, they build their house there, they have their permanent residence there. At the end of the day, you are not thinking of your children who are not yet been born. You are not thinking of where they are going to live. Land is so precious. Nobody allows land to go. But because of the selfishness of the few naira you want to get, you sell your land, you sell your identity, and your communities are losing their identity culturally. You are now populated by strangers, and they're going to outvote you at the end of the day. You will become very irrelevant. Are we so stupid? We need to be very careful. Individuality must not be sacrificed simply because of selfishness. We must think of the communality. It is theology that gives us that sense. In Israel, everybody thinks the same way. In Islam, they look at it as a common ummah, a common community. That is the sense that religion is bringing into education and into nation building. Many leaders of nations today do not demonstrate the normal spiritual and moral rectitude expected of their offices. They have no good moral records. They have no philosophical orientation. They have no ideology nor political mentors. I walked into a bookshop not long ago, and to my delight, I picked up 10 books authored by Obafemi Awolowo, My March Through Prison, Politics of the Republic, Voice of Wisdom, Voice of Reason, several books by this great man, who was not just a giant intellectually and philosophically, also religiously, was a devout man of the church, but he practicalized them by showing that good people can make positive impact in governance. How can you explain the situation where the Western region had television before some countries in Europe? We had television before Egypt, where civilization started from. We built skyscraper with cocoa. The roads he constructed are still there. The estates are still there. Industrial estates are still there. The forests are still there. The free education has consequences. The free healthcare. Why have we not produced brains like that? But now we have politicians who are so empty-headed. They have no philosophical orientation. They have no ideology. They have nothing to offer anybody. How do you want to explain the situation where a president of America's, that great United States of America, became president in Donald Trump without having served in government, even at the local government level? What system throws up leaders like that? It simply shows us that some things are wrong philosophically. And when those things are wrong and the good, strong people are not available, people will go for whoever is available, irrespective of their bad moral records. He became the prime minister, he became the president, And he's still having problems. He has been fighting all the days since he became the president, and he's still fighting today. He has not had the peace of mind. America is not stable. No democracy is stable now. What do you want to say of the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Boris Johnson, who is living in that conservative country, living at 10 Downing Street with a girlfriend with whom they have a child? They are not legally married. It was unthinkable for a man who was not properly married to go through what they have gone through now. And he is the Prime Minister of the country. What moral record is he going to show to people in terms of being an example of marriage? Or you go to the royal family and see the problems they are having there, the problem with Prince Charles, the problem with Diana, the death of Diana, the problem with their children, and a lot of values are going down. These were people who are supposed to have very good philosophical and theological underpinning. How do you want to explain a situation where the Crown Prince in Saudi Arabia was suspected as authorizing the killing of Jamal Khashoggi in an embassy located in another country in Turkey? How will a Crown Prince even be suspected to have a hand in the killing of their own citizen, their own Arab citizen, in an embassy where there's supposed to be protection, located in another country? Impunity. How will you explain the assassination of Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, the leading brain in Iran's nuclear program, and now they are suspecting foreign countries, either Israel or America, right in another land when there is no war ongoing, technically as of today? How do you want to explain the situation in North Korea and the nuclear programs of the man whom nobody has been able to tame, who is a threat not just to South Korea, but to the world at large? Why is it that we have failed leadership and people appear to be very, very helpless? What do we say of Nigeria's current leadership? From the presidency downwards, who constituted of very old people who have wasted years in office without meaningful peace and progress of the nation, under whose watch this country's economy is collapsing, the currency is destroyed. I'm told now that the Naira is exchanged for $1 for the rate amount of about 500. How can it ever be? We were in this same country where people flew to New York, return ticket on Nigerian Airways for 30 Naira. When Peugeot 504, brand new, was purchased at the cost of 5,500 Naira. I could remember the days when I was ASU chairman, 1988. We had the crisis here because there was a car loan given to us by government. And when they didn't give us the car loan, the price of Volkswagen B2 was increased from 1,800 to 3,000 Naira. And so we were so unhappy that they have made us to lose. A car was sold for 1,800 Naira, including registration in the same country. And now you are buying a tire of a Jeep for 70,000 Naira. You are exchanging 1 Naira for 500 to $1 in a country where the Naira was stronger than the dollar in those days. How did we get here? And why do we just allow this downward trend to go? It's a suicidal trend, and we are not bothered. Nigerians have very remarkable shock absorber, very unprecedented. Inflation is skyrocketing, lives are being wasted, and our leaders are not even showing empathy or apology for what is happening. They are so remote from us. Power is beyond the reach of the honest and knowledgeable professionals who can help the country, but is being monopolized by people who are politicians, who recycle themselves. When they leave office as governor, they go to the Senate. Are they the only ones who can rule in this country? And some people are in Senate for 16 years. What kind of constitution will guarantee perennial tenure in a Senate? Why must we copy the system outside when we know that it does not work for us? Why can't we, even in this country, stop this second term syndrome? Give everybody a single term, even as president and governor, and let them get out of the place. What they can't do, let them leave. You see the acrimony and the manipulations and the godfatherism that have made our politics unworkable. Why have we found ourselves in this condition? Why have you found ourselves in the condition where the military still rule over us? And here, I like to say here, it is not the hood that makes a monk. Whether a general is retired or serving, a general is a general. We are still under military rule because our president is a general of the army. And those who call the shots in this country, is it Babangida, is it Abdul Salami, is it Olusegun Obasanjo, they are still playing Nigeria like a chessboard. among the military. They leave the khaki and they come to civilian leadership. And at the end of the day, they don't respect the Constitution and they just allow things to go the way they are now. Things are falling. Things are failing. I assume that this failure is due in part to lack of spiritual conversion of their heart and lack of godly character, which normally undergirds behavior of rulers and leaders for progressive nationhood. In the days of the prophet Samuel and Nathan, leaders were kept in check on behalf of God. But today, the churches and the mosques are voiceless as watchmen over government. Why? Because they themselves have compromised their integrity. We may recall comparatively the exploits of Alexander the Great, the great conqueror of the Greek world in those days. He was a champion of Hellenization throughout the Greco-Roman world. And we attribute his orientation and feat to having been specially tutored by the great philosopher Aristotle. Philip of Macedon, when he took charge of the Greek Empire before the Romans came to office, he got his son, a young boy, and handed him over to Aristotle. He said, train this boy for me. And Aristotle was the first scientist, was the first philosopher. He produced Socrates, produced Plato later on. He gave the boy the best of education. At the age of 33, Alexander the Great had conquered every part of the world at that time. When there was nowhere else for him to conquer again, he started crying. Of course, they killed him. His generals killed him. He died at 33 years of age. He was already in charge of India, in charge of Egypt, in charge of Judea, everywhere. A boy of 33. Why? There was a fundamental orientation, the training he got from Aristotle. What are the religious leaders doing today? To mentor potential leaders. It is the religious organizations who have the fear of God and the precedence of how good leaders were raised in the past in the scriptures that have the capability to raise leaders for Nigeria. And I dare say, Nigerians are the easiest people to govern. Once they have a leader, they will queue behind that leader. We are not a bunch of hopeless people who don't know what we are doing. It's just that we don't have a good leader. I recall the days of Idi Agbon. When Idi Agbon insisted on discipline, people cooperated. When Moshood Abiola came out to contest election, Christians voted for a Muslim ticket, which was not the ideal combination, but they voted for him to let everybody know that we are looking for leadership wherever it can be found, credible leadership. So all these divisions that we found to bring about disunity in this country, they are just a ploy by the upper class to politicize leadership for their own benefit. The ordinary man sees his brother across the religion, across the social strata as brothers and sisters. Alexander the Great was able to achieve that because of the orientation. That is what is missing now. The theological content, the philosophical content that we need in our leaders today, we need to groom them. Not people who are jobless, who are connected, who find themselves in places of office. They get there, they don't even know what to do about it. No agenda, nothing. When Jesus Christ was to start his ministry, in Isaiah 61, Luke chapter 4, comparatively, he went there and he said, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me. He has anointed me to preach this and to do this and do this and do that and do that. He gave an agenda. And when he hung upon the cross, he said, it's finished. I've accomplished my agenda. Today, governments promise nothing. They do nothing. They deliver nothing. And we still celebrate them because of our jejune orientation politically. We need to wake up. We need to wake up. The concept of the philosopher king did not begin with Alexander. It was so with the kings of Israel like David and Solomon. They were not only practically inclined, but they were also philosophically inclined. They were God-fearing and they were able to develop their governmental systems. All these are what we expect our religious organizations to introduce into the education system, right from childhood, from the home to the school. Is a combined effort of developing the human personality. It's not just schools. Charity begins at home, we are told. Reformation and the missionary eras of Christianity during the period of the European civilizations were influenced by Christianity. They brought this to bear in governance, they brought this to bear in nationhood, and also in education. In fact, the Pew Research Center in America on Religion and Peace emphasized that most of the leaders, the Protestant reformers, they use the Bible to bring about educational development of their own people and the development of the human character. As immigrants were coming into America in those days, in the early period of the nation, the Quakers, the Protestants, the Roman Catholics, all of them struggled to establish schools because they knew that they will have a bunch of lawless citizenry if they do not bring in religion into education. That was why education and religion became intrinsically related in the formation of European nations, European institutions, and American institutions. Today, we live in a world where many things seem to have changed, and they are still changing from the ideal, from the cherished culture we used to have, from the spiritual truths we used to imbibe, from the moral values that guided our lives, and from the systems that were God-derived, which sustained our past generations who lived better lifestyle around better government and society than ours. We speak of the good old days instead of expecting better days tomorrow. The consequences of this tragic shift in culture and values have resulted in a general disconnect of many societies from godly living. Hence, the failures in governments arising from lack of credible leadership the world over. It is the same in every part of the world. Virtually every good institution and infrastructure have failed. We are now in a position where we are so hopeless, like Ayikwe Ama, the Ghanaian literature expert who wrote, "The beautiful ones are not yet born." Do we have beautiful ones who can change this country? Of course we do. Is there really a credible candidate in the making as we approach 2023? Since the exit of Nnamdi Azikiwe, the Igbos have never had a generally respected leader. They are a leaderless people, absolutely leaderless. Look at the Anambra State election, more than 20 people were aspiring for the governorship office. Ever since Obafemi Awolowo left, the Yorubas have not been able to have a common leader. Bola Ahmed Tinubu may be making his own effort. I don't think he fits into that show. We have no leader. We are leaderless people. Even the House of Fulani, since Ahmadu Bello left, they do not have a common voice. They have no common leader today. What went wrong with Nigeria? That after the First Republic, we have not been able to develop credible leadership up till today. What can we do to build leadership? I believe the religious sector should be the breeding ground for this. But unfortunately, they have abdicated responsibility for this. Rather, what persists is political apathy, a jaundiced philosophy that politics is dirty. But the absence of the good people is contributing to the failure of governance, because all it takes for darkness to persist is for light to abstain. All it takes for good people to be in power is for them to abstain. Then the bad people will be in power. And we have to bear the consequences of putting the bad people in office. As Professor Wole Soyinka rightly put it, it dies in him who keeps silent in the face of tyranny. Intrinsic human nature and behavior across races and societies have remained very constant in every generation. Man's relationship with God, God's judgment of man, the laws of God, his punishment of sin, his holding leaders accountable, all these have been same all through the ages. Nothing really is new under the sun. There is no problem we are facing now that people have not faced in the past. And if they had a good relationship with God and they overcame their problems, we can use religion or theology in a positive way to generate leadership, to generate virtues, and to ask for a restoration to the good old days when human beings were human beings indeed. Not today that people have lost every sense of humaneness. I can tell you, in those days, for a young child to see a corpse, that child will not be able to sleep for days. Today, corpses litter the ground, and students will be playing football beside it. Nobody cares. We have lost the sense of humanness. We don't have empathy any longer. Life is meaningless to us. We have degenerated, unknown to us. Our human personality has degenerated. Our African values have degenerated. Keep theology apart. Our African philosophies were complementary to our theological undercurrents. I still remember when we were still in primary school, the things they taught us. were moral values that taught us to behave very well. Not everything came from religion. For those who are Yorubas, I'm sure you can still remember that popular poem. Iṣẹ́ ni oògùn ìṣẹ́, múra sí iṣẹ́ rẹ ọ̀rẹ́ mi, iṣẹ́ la fi ń dẹni gíga, bí a kò bá rẹ́ni fẹ̀yìntì, bí ọ̀lẹ là ń rí, bí a kò bá rẹ́ni gbẹ́kẹ̀lé, à á tẹra mọ́ṣẹ́ ni, bàbá rẹ lè lówó lọ́wọ́, ìyá rẹ lè lẹ́sìn lẹ́ẹ̀kan, tó o bá gbójúlé wọn, o tẹ́tán ni mo wí fún ọ. Ìyà ń bẹ fọ́mọ tí ò gbọ́n, ẹkún ń bẹ fọ́mọ tó ń sá kiri. I learned that at Okesuna Primary School, Ojaba Ilorin, when I was in primary school. It has stuck in my brain. So when you want to misbehave because your father is connected, they warn you. Your father may have horses in the stable. Your mother may have stores. If you depend upon the heritage of your parents, you are finished. What you do not suffer for, what you do not work hard to achieve, cannot endure in your life. How many great people who are multi-billionaires, as soon as they die, there's chaos in their family, they cannot even see eye to eye. Well, these are the things that we are talking about. We were molded by our African culture, the good ones. We were molded by our fear of God. We were molded by going to worship God, having the fear of God, waking up in the morning and praying, going to pray before you sleep. That was our life. We are where we are today because of what religion made of us and our philosophical orientation. We have thrown all this out because of our emphasis on science and technology and a secular lifestyle. Today, homosexuality, same-sex relationship are becoming the order of the day. Transgender changes are even happening here and there. Abortion is readily available, cheap and frequent divorce, bestiality, incest. You know, these are things that are coming into Nigeria today. Isn't it a shame that parents will be sleeping with their daughters in Europe? Many parents do it. They do it, and they started doing that in this country. A man will rape a girl of 3, a girl of 6 and 7. We are becoming very depraved. And with the pornographic pictures being available cheaply on the streets, you are actually, the governments, by their own abstinence, in enforcing their laws of moral code, they are encouraging people becoming loose. So rape has become the order of the day, and courtesan has become the order of the day. Things are going on terribly in this country. The foundation was destroyed, and we are treating them with kids' gloves. How do we raise leaders of tomorrow? Instead of people who have no godly character, who have no African identity and a sense of patriotism. I repeat, unfortunately, the churches and the mosques, which ought to be the standard bearers, have bent backward to accommodate and promote some of these heinous sins. And they even persecute faithful people who want to insist on doing things in the right way. How can you imagine a world where marriages are no longer binding, where people can divorce at will, where premarital sex, sexual harassment in schools, sexual harassment in offices are the order of the day, where banks will send their own beautiful girls, daughters of other people, into the market to be soliciting for money when they knew this is a package prostitution, selling them to sell their body because they want to bring in money to the banks. And we look the other way. We look the other way as if it doesn't matter. That is where everything originated from the foundation. And today, the entire fabric of the society is crumbling. Satanism and cultism have even entered the primary schools today. People are being killed anyhow. People are joining secret corps, even as primary school children. These are the leaders of tomorrow. My worry now is this: with the breed of youth we have produced today, are they ready for governance? Even the young ones who find their ways to governance, what did they do with power? They are also behaving the way of the corrupt politicians here. Gone are the days where parents could discipline their children, where schools were places where people were disciplined, where students will not be allowed to carry arms. But today, things have gone haywire. I am arguing here that after a long era of God's revelation and his interaction and influence upon mankind, people today have jettisoned the consciousness of the role of God in human society. Globalization has also shrunk the human societal divide to the extent that a bad thing happening at one end of the world is imbibed within a few minutes at the other end. There is a contest now between godliness and secularism. That battle is ongoing. And people think that churches are no longer necessary. You go to England today, go to America today, many people are no longer going to places of worship. They actually describe themselves as post-Christian. So sometimes when certain things happen and America misbehaves and people want to take it out on Christians in other parts of the world, it's because people have forgotten that America is no longer a Christian country. It is a post-Christian country. In fact, last week, there was a meeting in Florida, a meeting of the state, and the person who led the prayer was a member of the Church of Satan. They invoked the power of Satan, invoked Buddha, invoked all the pagan idols in an American state, Florida. Things have gone the other way. It is only in the global south, particularly in Africa, that people still count religion as being very, very important. In other places, many people no longer think religion is very important. They look up to sports, the sports heroes, and far, far, far more than the professors who are intellectual giants, the people who are in the entertainment industry. These are the values of the people. Philosophically, Epicureanism, which is the philosophy of thinking that pleasure is the ultimate goal of human existence, is what is prevalent today. People are not encouraged to go into hard work. You ask your child, do you want to be a teacher? He will say, God forbid. You want to be a pastor, you want to be an imam, they will say, God forbid. Today, it's only a few people who are properly channeled that will go into those areas because they are no longer attractive. People want to make it quick. They don't want to suffer. They don't want to go through the mill. Go through the mill. It's like those of us who started this university in 1984, September, I came here. Can you imagine somebody who's been here for 36 years in this same university? So what story do you want to tell about this university that we are not part of? There is a commitment. There is an interest. If this place has become your own community, it becomes your own family, and you keep on producing students one step after the other over the years. You have a stable tradition. Harvard has a tradition. Oxford does. Cambridge does. Al-Azhar does. That is the role of stability. But today, we are losing all that. Now, when education had the God content as a driving force, better human beings were produced as well-educated graduates who changed their societies for better. But now that God has been virtually chased out of the educational system, the devil seems to have taken over the human hearts and to influence the curricula of schools and universities. Prayer is no longer allowed. Religious instruction is no longer allowed in several areas. And secular ethics and culture are now becoming the dominant elements in the curriculum. When you train people in the best of education without character, all you have succeeded in doing is to produce a bunch of clever devils. That's why somebody will use his expertise to make a bomb that will kill millions, to make ammunition, to develop nuclear weapons, negative use of science and technology, because their hearts were not converted. But there were religiously inclined scientists like Albert Einstein, like Isaac Newton. These were Christians who were very devoted Christians, yet they were not less scientists because they were devoted people. But when people have a good character, they will use their own technology for the good of man. That's why we have electricity. That's why we have vehicles. We have aeroplanes. They make life better, not how to destroy mankind. Today, people are at war. There is no part of this war that is at peace today. What is wrong with the human beings that we relish in killing each other? Look at Ethiopia, fighting the Tigray people, killing the people. A war everywhere. In India, the same thing. The human being relishes in war, relishes in crisis, because the fundamental education and the theological orientation is missing. Religious organizations and institutions, as I said earlier on, they were very active in the educational system globally. We need to go back to the training of character and making people to know that they are accountable not just unto God, but also unto the government, unto their people, and to their conscience as well. I'm jumping a number of pages here. Religion played a very important role in the development of the universities in the past. Some advanced civilizations established higher education to train their skilled labor. In those days, it used to be priests, military people, rulers, and other elites. The earliest universities were founded in Asia and Africa, predating the first European medieval universities. University of Al-Qurayn was founded in Morocco in 859. So Africa actually had the very first set of universities. It's considered by many to be one of the earliest degree awarding institutions. Al-Azhar University in Cairo was established in 970. It occupies the same pride of place as the medieval Islamic madrasas, which later became universities. However, the modern concept of universities as formal institutions of learning today, as we know them, they owe their origin to the medieval Christian traditions. These started in cathedrals or monastic schools, often established by the papal bull, by the Pope. It was the church that established the modern European universities, just as the Muslim organizations and other kings or emirs established the Muslim universities of old ancient traditions there. So religious sector produced universities, whether Islamic or Christian. Kings also founded universities, such as the King's College of the University of London. It was founded by Edward V. Major universities founded included University of Bologna in 1088, University of Paris in 1150, University of Oxford 1096 to 1196 during that period, University of Cambridge 1209, University of Cologne in Germany 1388, University of St. Andrews in Scotland 1413, University of Louvain in Belgium 1425. The oldest institution of higher learning in USA is Harvard. It was established in 1636. Its origin was Christian, just like most other European universities. It was named after John Harvard, after whose resources was used to start the university. It was meant to train Puritans who had migrated to the United States of America in order to provide training to the clergy for the Commonwealth. It was renamed Harvard University after the clergyman John Harvard, a University of Cambridge alumnus, who willed to the new school, a worth of £779 of library books, just 400 books. The culture of modern universities, the titles we use in universities, the offices we occupy, the processions and the paraphernalia we use today, they owe their origin to the adoption of the church system. When you say chancellor of a university, it came from the church. Pro-chancellor, vice-chancellor, registrar, provost, dean. These were church titles because the church and the university system were united. They were together. In fact, when people were called to the bar, they were called to the bar in those days at the chancel of the church. So law was produced as a result of that. I am going to this history to let us understand that even the culture we have today, they owe their origin to theology. In the Nigerian context, the spirit of morality and spirituality as essential components of human development motivated missionary bodies to establish the mission schools. Christian schools and Muslim schools operated as complements to government or public schools. I can guess that many of our listeners here benefited from mission education, whether Christian or Muslim. And in those days, people didn't discriminate between one school or the other. People like Moshood Abiola and several Muslim leaders, they attended Christian schools. They were trained by the Christian school. Does that stop them from becoming Muslims? No. In the days of the Civil War, in those days, my parents relocated from Lokoja to Ilorin. And the accommodation we got was at Ojauba. And the nearest school to us was Okesunobi School, a Muslim school, where every morning at the assembly, it is the Quran we are going to recite in the assembly. That was where my father took me and my brother. That's where I had my primary school, in a Muslim school. Today, I'm a bishop and a professor of Christian theology. When people were looking for education, they knew that whether you went to Christian school or Muslim school, all of them instilled discipline and morals. And that's what they wanted. And we got the best of it. And today, we have friends across the religious divide. That is what theology can do for bringing the nation together and by bringing discipline. Now, the fight for independence of African nations was spearheaded by people who also were religiously inclined. They allowed their theology to influence them, and they were the crop of the first leaders in Africa. Are you talking about Jomo Kenyatta of Kenya, Kenneth Kaunda of Zambia, Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, Dawda Jawara of Gambia, Nasser of Egypt, Leopold Sedar Senghor of Senegal, Julius Nyerere of Tanzania, and our own Nigerian leader. Do we still have the cream of these leaders today? They were God-fearing leaders who brought their religion to their offices. That is what we're asking us to go back to. During the fight for the independence of African nations, the churches and the mosques, they used the religion as a platform to advance the fight for decolonization. We could remember James Johnson, called Holy Johnson, who went to England a number of times to fight for decolonization. We could remember Herbert Macaulay, who used the platform of their churches and their various schools to fight against the British to get the Nigerian independence. So politics and religion were not totally separated. They were complementary. Or what do you want to say of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. of America? He was a full-time minister of God of the Southern Baptist denomination. He took the book of Amos in the Bible to ask for justice and righteousness in defense of the rights of the blacks in America today. Obama came up as a president because of the dream that Martin Luther King had. He was killed for his dreams, but religion was at the bottom as a factor of his philosophy and his agitation. Don't look at prophets of old. They were fighting for moral reformation. So people are not just supposed to confine religion to the places of worship. It is a matter of the heart. It is a matter of the home. It is a matter of the school. If we are able to get them back, then we can begin to build a new set of human beings. Someone asked Professor Wole Soyinka about his hope for the future of Nigeria. You know what he said? He said the present generation of leaders, he said, forget them. They are lost. He said they are lost. He said, so what is the hope for tomorrow? He said, unless we start breathing a new set of leaders from childhood and instilling in them the right attitude. Today, we do not have good people who can be able to get us out of the difficulty of failed government, failed educational system, and failed leadership that we are in here today. We have called for a movement from too much secularization of education to allowing religious content to go back again. If we do not, then the world will just operate without moral values or spiritual checkpoints. That is the argument here. Bill Gates says the following, I quote him, I argue that the bracketing out of religion, for whatever reason, from within the public process of educating citizens is seriously debilitating. To have any vibrancy, citizenship and education related to it must give more attention to the fundamental matter of beliefs and believing. That entails scrutinizing religion as a common ingredient in the human condition with a potential to transform for both good and for ill. I claim that the extent to which the moral roots of citizenship education succeeds in drawing on the energies of religion and refining its aberrations may even determine the operational worth and lasting outcomes of public education in any country. What this billionaire is saying here is, don't leave out religion, don't leave out theology, studies about God, knowledge about God, don't leave out prayer, don't leave out discipline out of the evolution of education. Bring them in. The extent to which we allow it will determine how far you can go as a successful nation. We are arguing again that theology is a very important fundamental factor for good education that has a complement of knowledge and character for values, for integrity, and for progress in nation building. That is the argument here. I've quoted a number of scholars, which you can be made available for those who have access to this. I go now to the conclusion. I also even mentioned Peter Okebukola and his comment on good governance in the society. He also says that character content is also very, very relevant. Very, very relevant. And let me just quote this other scholar here. It says our values, our information and communication technology, and then several other issues here must be brought into the training of the children who go to schools today. They should be taught subjects that constitute the curriculum of civic. I searched for the content of civic education in Osun State, and you will be surprised that even in Osun State, civic education teaches godliness, It teaches patriotism. It teaches courtesan, teaches good character, responsible parenthood, and fighting against political apathy, drugs, and others. If we can go back to the good content of our curriculum, if we can change the curriculum that is very religious, also very, very secular to the extent that it does not drive away religion, and if we can train people in civic education, we can actually customize a curriculum that can produce better graduates who will not lose their African identity, graduates who will remain religiously committed people, God-fearing people with leadership potentials, but who also will be courageous enough to bring about the change that we require in the society today. A Messiah is needed in Nigeria. And I postulate that because our national problems are both physical and spiritual, attitudinal and systemic, the study and practical adoption of the principles and tenets of theology can be helpful in providing the foundational bedrock for sound education and nation building in Nigeria and Africa, as well as the world at large. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, and the Dean of the Faculty of Arts, this is my argument in this lecture, that theology is very relevant across the religious device, across the social strata, as a potent tool to re-engineer our educational system so that we can produce graduates who are properly educated and who are properly equipped to lead us away from failed governance, away from failed culture, onto a Nigeria that is properly, authentically African and authentically God-fearing and progressive. That is my submission, and I hope that this message will resonate to educationists and to those who have one thing or the other to do in re-engineering the Nigerian constitution and the Nigerian polity. I thank you all, ladies and gentlemen, for your attention. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes, I want to congratulate our speaker, Professor Dapo Ashaju. He has really dealt with the topic. Before I go ahead, some of our professors who are physically present here. I can see Professor we have Professor Tuji and Professor we are very good that we are here. And for those who are Prof actually sensitive of his presentation. Is that in our educational system, our policies, in our governance, and now. And schools, as well as leaders and government have failed. We shall witness enhanced and what I say that many leaders today demonstrate moral respected their offices. Some of them have no moral records, no philosophical orientation, no ideology, no political management. He mentioned that globalization has not only strong human societal rights, it has also provided the platform for shared cultures and mutual influences to the exception that technology has played very and massive sustainable values and rightness, discipline, versus lawlessness, versus work of the flesh, heaven versus earth, and life versus death. And it's when education had grown as it is primarily was as educated graduates push graduates is that the foreign standard of education change just like so the moral foundation of students and he concluded that religious leaders are leaders who have conscience and have fear of God. So we are happy because our moral values have been passed down. And today, most of the Christians, most of them don't have a church, and some of them no longer have moral standards. This is the nutshell. Summary of once again, we want to thank Professor Dr. Osaju. And this hall where lecture is taking place as our listeners to write their questions. Will be reading them out by one, so that Prof can respond. And I want to let you know that the lecture is live on YouTube, so that you can even follow after this. Thank you, sir. Question by one, and then Prof can quickly respond to them. First one is that what is the relationship between morality and religion? Morality without religion. I don't want to answer everything at once.
I can have them.
Okay. I think I'll give the questions so that we can answer together so that not to waste our time. So,
yes, thank you, Dean. There are also some questions on the screen. Oh, they're all here. The first question is relationship between morality and religion. Can we talk about morality without religion? Of course, yes. Morality can issue from religion. It can also come out naturally outside religion. There are communist countries where they do not even believe in God. China is one, here they have their moral values. There are some who have good behavior, they have their discipline, they have their code, but they do not believe in God. So their own moral code does not issue from any perspective at all. So morality and religion are complementary. Religion is a good ground for fueling morality. It gives you the boundaries, it gives you the nutrients on what to behave. But man on his own has his natural instincts. There are natural moral values. You don't need religion to tell you that killing another person is wrong. You don't need that to tell you that stealing is also wrong. There are generally accepted norms, moral codes, ethical codes. The moral code that is connected to religion has a stronger force because of the sense of supernatural accountability by those who believe in it. They know that when I do this, there is retribution to good people will be rewarded, bad people will be punished. It's different from a situation where people have their morality without any supernatural supervision. That's the end of the matter. There's no heaven, there's no hereafter, here and there. That's contrary to religion. But those who know they have a God to whom you are going to account, they have an impetus to be able to implement that. So there are people who are atheists, who are agnostics, yet they may be well behaved, they may be committed to their marriages, they may be more hardworking to their jobs. You can have people who are religious and who may fail in needs. So they are complementary, but they are mutually exclusive. The second question is, members of the executive, legislative, and judiciary affiliate with one religion or the other. Why do they not follow up with the principles? How do we make them accountable? I think those people are just on their own. Many of them, when they have money, the access to their space and the grandeur in which they live, then they just misbehave. Even though many of them originated from one church or the mosque, are those leaders able to control them? No. You see, religion is a very free system. Somebody who sits today, who is in church or who is in mosque, may choose not to come tomorrow. Can you force him to come? It's an optional thing. It's a voluntary decision that people to provide mentorship to those who are willing to be mentored. And these people, are they going to listen to them or to their godfathers? Are they going to listen to them or to the demands of their pocket? These people, they bear Christian or Muslim names, and they are just on their own. I believe that some religious leaders have also failed, because rather than call them to order, rather than discipline them and criticize them for what they are doing, many of the religious leaders have also compromised. Because there is such a question here on the screen that says that the church leaders and the politicians, in some respects, some church leaders are even worse. Some leaders are also worse, because sometimes they have used their religion to exploit the people, and they keep quiet when they ought to out of courage. People are not supposed to allow these things to degenerate the way they are now. People just can't be bothered. So the same injustice we have in the secular realm is also found even in the religious arena as well, but that does not deny them their rights and roles as supervisors and spiritual guides to people and governors. I think some are talking to them, but they are not listening. And there are some of them, once they get to that office, they do not even connect at all to their religious roots. As far as they are concerned, they want to make their money and they don't want anything to stand on their way. So that is my answer to that question. It's a free world, and people can just take their decisions. There's no system that can keep them accountable. Apart from the religious example, look at the followers of Obafemi Awolowo in those days. To be called an Awoist was a thing of pride. It confers on you respect. People expected of you the kind of intellectualism, the kind of political passion and commitment and integrity of Obafemi Awolowo. Mention one of the followers of Awolowo who worked in his own ways. So to have a mentor is one thing. For them to keep to that line that they have a mentor to follow is another. We are not mentoring leaders at all. So these people are just on their own. They won the election because they bribed, in most cases, they bribed, they intimidated, and so they are not even accountable to their religious leaders. Even when they pray for them to enter there, it was their money that got them in, not God sometimes. So we have to get that clear. How do we explain the corrupt and ostentatious lifestyle of religious leaders if truly theology is central to nation building, where we cannot use their own lifestyle to judge the religion? Because you also have so many people who are religious leaders who live a life of moderation in line with the tenets of their religion. That some religious leaders live larger than life is simply an act of indiscipline. And I can tell you as a religious leader myself, that even within the organizations that control the churches, same with the Muslims, they have problems with certain people who are on their own. When somebody, I am a bishop of the Anglican Church. We have hierarchy, we have authority, we have a constitution, we have every other thing. You are accountable to somebody. But when somebody is a Pentecostal leader who founded his own church and he's in control of his own money, his family controls the place, and then he runs his businesses, it comes to him, and he misbehaves, he buys a aeroplane, you won't blame the religion. That is his own way. People will just judge him for what he has done and assess him whether what he has done is right or not. You won't pick that to now isolate the relevance of religion. Because all of us in one way or the other, that scripture, that tradition, that culture is what we need to imbibe in us the virtues that can help nationhood. You will not say because some people have misbehaved, you now generalize. No, not at all. There are a number of people who are being killed for their faith, a number of people who are suffering, a number of people who are there preaching. In every church, every mosque, millions of people are preaching every week. You do not see those ones. It is the ones who are misbehaving or misbehaving. We need to look at that. So we must avoid the generalization. But we are not saying theologians have a better credential, but that happens to be their field, and that is what they are called to do. And if we allow them to be relevant, and we allow their own nutrients to be in the curriculum, and their system to be reintroduced into the curriculum as it was, then we will produce better human beings. There is a question here. You went theological in identifying certain contours to nation building, but your postulations appear one-sided. What about the role of God in ensuring that God needs to intervene now without waiting for the judgment day? I think we need to be very careful. We need to be very careful here. For those who know theology very well, for those who know the workings of God, God has his ways and God has his own timing. God cannot be used by man to carry out his own selfish interests. He allows certain things to happen in certain ways. He knows the way he gets people up. Look, I'm not trying to be negative when I look at developments in this country. But I can tell you, if you want to talk about the actions of God, God has a way of dealing with people who have misbehaved in one way or the other. How many people were leaders in this country? Do you know how they ended? Do you know how they ended? When we had a problem with Abacha in this place, and the lives of people who are progressives were in danger, even in prison yard, when Abacha died and people were rejoicing, which should not be, but what was on the mind of the people? They just believed that his death was the only way the people could be free from his control. Not that I agree with him. Some say it's an act of God, some say no. So let's not bring God into some of these things. I want to encourage us. It is also wrong for people to sit back and say they are praying that God will come and change. There are so many countries in the world that God will not be the one to run Nigeria for us. He has given us brain, he has given us his code, he has given us his precedence. We should be able to run our own lives. We should be able to determine our principles and hold our leaders accountable. It's like somebody who does not read for the examination and is praying for success. Where will he get the stuff to write in the examination hall? So we need to understand that faith without works is going to be there. We have responsibility to deliver our country. The day we are tired of oppression, we know how to arise. The day we are tired of the system, we know how to throw up good leadership to change the system. So don't blame God by saying, how can God not judge them? God's judgment is his own prerogative. We cannot decide that. We cannot import that into religious developments. Political developments. Number 5, is there any difference between our politicians and church leaders today, with many people becoming politicians in clergy room? There is a clear difference. Some have misbehaved. Those who have misbehaved, you can say there's no difference, because the corruption that we are fighting is also found in the churches, also found in the mosque. Why? Because the religious leaders are also human beings. They are not angels in human clothing. They are human beings. They are also part of their system. And even when you as a religious leader, you are nurturing people, you are conscious of the fact that there are different people that you are dealing with. It's like the story of the Noah's Ark. When God said, I regret I made man, I'm going to destroy the whole of humanity. He told Noah, I'm going to wipe up humanity, I'm going to wipe off all animals, and you have to make an ark and take some animals, species, into the ark. Good animals were put inside the ark, bad animals were also inside the ark, and Noah was cohabiting with them for the period when the flood lasted. So it's like the religious duty or theology. You have in your ark good people, bad people. It's your duty to take care of them. A church is not a building of holy people. It is a building of people who are aspiring to be righteous and who are hoping to make it to heaven, following the code of the Lord and Savior. So don't judge the church as an institution that is independent. Yes, we are in the world, we are not of the world. The church is to throw up the code as a moral guide for people to choose from, whether they choose to accept it or not. It's a free world. So we are dealing with freedom or free will as at now. So there are people who are politicians, just like our own politicians, we condemn them. But there are people who are very devoted and who are committed. These are the people that we are supposed to deal with, and they are in the majority. These are the questions I can find here. Not aware of any other one that has come up here. Yeah, I think I've mentioned this, the relationship between morality and religion. I've answered this question. Yes, there is a, what's number 7? Number 7, can we say that our imams and pastors are still relevant in the reorientation of the citizens of this country, judging by the antecedent? They are very relevant because government may have its own policy. A part of the area skipped in my lecture were the efforts made by the governments in the past. Muhammad Buhari, during the first coming, he started the war against indiscipline. Abacha had war against indiscipline and corruption. Shagari had his ethical orientation. Babangida had his MAMSA, mass mobilization for socio-economic recovery, and they all had their own programs. Goodluck Jonathan had the transformation agenda, or whatever they called it. There are systems, there are moral systems geared towards the same goal, but those are systemic, they are institutional. But the ordinary people in their millions, they know where they go to on Sunday, they know where they go to on Friday. And those local people, you do not hear their voices, they are the ones who are molding their spirituality and their theology. It is the abuse of theology that is leading us to the problem we are having today, where people are now using religion as an instrument to kill. But it is a good one that will enable people to fight against corruption and to behave properly and to be peaceful and harmonious in their relationship. So when we are talking about religion, I think we should segregate between those people you see who misbehave and those people who are the larger majority who are committed to the ideas of their religion. So I will say that they have a role to play in the orientation. They are the ones who have the larger role. And what's the difference between the theologians and the church people? Somebody asked that question. Those who are the theologians in the universities are the theoretical theologians. They are the ones who postulate theories, who deal with the moral issues and the ethical concepts. But those who really manage the pulpits, they are the practical theologians. Anyone who deals with God, who teaches about God, who gets people about God is a theologian. Whatever religion and whatever your location, whether you are in the university or you are in the mosque or you are in the churches. So then number 8. Number 8 here, can we adopt a curriculum where all students in our institutions offer at least a course in theology for a semester in their respective program? I agree that in our general studies program and in the civics program for the secondary schools, we should be able to have the content of theology and philosophy. The two of them are supposed to go together. It is the philosophy of a person that is going to influence his attitude to life. Somebody who's Machiavellian, for example, that will say that the end justifies the means. So he will kill, he will assassinate, he will destroy, he will bribe as long as it can help him to get to the office. He may want to cheat when he gets to the office. That is the wrong philosophy. Somebody who's Epicurean who want to say, well, the goal of life is for me to enjoy. So I want to get money here. I don't know tomorrow. That is his philosophy. But for somebody who has a sacrificial philosophy that says that it is not well with me if it's not well with my neighbor, that is the kind of philosophy that theology can give. And they are there in the Bible. Patriotism, love, endurance, patience, and cooperation. These are the things we should introduce again for the development of the proper human being who will be the proper educator and the proper politicians tomorrow. If you get a leader who has that, or a few of them, will have Nigerians who will follow and things will get better in this country. We should not throw theology out. Theology is important for full education. Theology is important for nation building. Thank you very much. I think I've answered this.
Several other questions here, but because of time, we may not be able to take everything. Once again, I want to thank you very much, sir. And I want to thank all of us who are online there, and several of our colleagues who are physically here. Professor Alice Adeni, immediately past, I can see your face. Dr. Fashion in London, I can see your face. And I think I saw Professor Abari. I want to thank all of you. Adetunbi Okunleye, we thank you. Now, I want to call on Dr. Olawale Lawal to give the vote of thanks.
Well,
what do you think? Understand that we are still on that part. It's not easy. It's not easy. We've traversed all kinds of issues of life, but you still remain constant. B, the idea, in spite of our contradictions, I'm very grateful and thank you for that. Just few remarks. One is that for those who believe in God, the maker of this world created nature. And in nature, there are two vital elements that are very indispensable to the existence of mankind: water and oxygen. And the maker of the nature has consistently ensured that water and oxygen are equally distributed to everybody. Whatever may be your social class, your state of origin, your ethnicity, and so on. Unfortunately, human beings behave otherwise, and I'm very sure that if it is possible to sell oxygen so that many of us will not exist again, I'm sure that's the ambition of some people. The problem is that they have not been able to get into that, achieve that ambition. So what I'm saying in fact is that quoting Mandela, it is a long walk to freedom. A long walk to freedom. And I I hope and I'm convinced that you will still remain on that path of that long walk to freedom. But what is a human being if the person does not have a vision of humanity, of redemption? Some people will say, oh, I've stood on this path for a very long time. I'm tired because people are not behaving or believing in my own way of looking at that long walk to freedom. My own simple idea is that once you believe in it, till you die, you continue on that path. And I can see that in you, not because you are here. If I don't believe that you are on that path, I will keep quiet, so as not to hurt your feelings. You still have a long way to go. There's a baton that you are holding, and some of the people who believe in you are holding, and they're going to pass on to the next one. So I'm happy that you are still one of the.
Let me stand on the existing protocol. I think I have 2 minutes to do this. I will do it in less than 2. First, I want to thank our guest speaker for today, Right Reverend Professor Olorinsho Dapo Ashaju. I want to thank you for your postulation, which you have done as Right Reverend with Episcopal excellence. I want to thank you for the teachings that you have done today, and I think somehow we'll take 1 or 2 things home, and I hope all of us will internalize some of the things that I've gathered from you. Thank you for your erudition. Thank you for your postulation. Thank you also for your biblical understanding of theology and all that you have done today. We thank you very much. After that, I want to thank also the Vice Chancellor of the University, Professor Olanrewaju Adigun, SAN, for his administrative clarity and for his leadership. I also want to thank our Dean for giving us this platform and also for your leadership. I also want to thank everybody who has come to grace this occasion, and we are very grateful for your attendance. Thank you very much.
You can all unmute yourself and say hello to our reverend. So I can see you submitting. Hello, sir.
Thank you so much, Prof.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you so much, Dean. Thanks to Professor Ashaju.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Olusholani on the line.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Prof. Good to see you, sir. In quite some time.
Thank you.
How are you, sir? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Mulala Oladele. I so have. Dr. Ladele. Dr. Ladele. Thank you.
Come and plug it in. Won't plug it, and they go even with the search. Ṣèbí bẹ́ẹ̀ ló wà tẹ́lẹ̀, ṣé bó lọ́ lọ túnṣe? Wọ́n nílò mọ́.
Omolola Ladele, Provost of Adenina College of Education. Thank you.
Kíní yóò jẹ́ kí n gbádùn kíní, wọ́n ní níṣẹ́ ó yẹ kí n Àjàyí Ṣẹ́gun. Okay. Thank you, Professor. Thank you for the wonderful delivery. We appreciate you. The Lord will continue to speaking. Thank you, my wonderful HOD. Thank you, my professor. It has been a blessing to us. That in-depth delivery. We appreciate you. Thank you, sir. So the team is promoted for us to speak, so you start at speak.
you.